The crystalline spires of the Nexarian vessel cast long shadows across the empty corridor as Commander Thaxis stood before the medical bay, his silver-scaled hands clasped behind his back. Through the transparent barrier, he watched his daughter float in the regeneration chamber, her ivory skin glowing faintly in the blue-tinged liquid. Solara's eyes remained closed, but her mind buzzed with activity that the medical sensors couldn't explain. "The diagnosis, Doctor?" Thaxis's voice carried the weight of command, though a tremor of concern slipped through his carefully maintained facade. Dr. Vex, the ship's chief medical officer, gestured to the holographic displays surrounding them. "Her physical form is perfect, Commander. But her neural patterns..." The doctor's secondary eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of distress among their kind. "They're unlike anything I've seen in a Nexarian. The patterns suggest abilities that haven't manifested in our species for millennia." Thaxis's scaled jaw tightened. "Aberrations. Mutations that nearly destroyed our civilization during the Age of Chaos." He turned away from the chamber, his ceremonial armor clicking softly. "The High Council cannot know of this. Our bloodline would be stripped of all rank." "But Commander, her potential is a threat," Thaxis cut him off. "To everything we've built, everything we stand for." The Nexarian Empire wasn't forged by wild talents, but by discipline and order. The ship shuddered slightly as it dropped out of hyperspace. Through the viewport, a distant research station orbited a pale blue gas giant. The station was officially listed as abandoned, but Thaxis knew better. Human scientists still worked there, studying the strange phenomena in this sector of space. "Prepare a stasis pod," he ordered. "Make it appear damaged, but ensure the life support systems remain functional." Dr. Vex's hands trembled as he input the commands. "Commander, she's your daughter." "No." Thaxis's voice turned to ice. "She is a liability. The humans will find her. They're known for their compassion." He spat the word like a curse. "Better they deal with her than risk her powers emerging among our people." Hours later, as the stasis pod drifted toward the research station, Solara's consciousness flickered. Though her body remained frozen, her mind reached out, touching the edges of reality in ways her father feared. She sensed his ship departing, felt the cold emptiness of space, and beneath it all, a spark of something new, hope, carried on the thoughts of the humans who would soon discover her. Dr. Rowan Harper stood at the station's observation deck, her dark eyes fixed on the strange readings her instruments had detected. At 43, she'd spent most of her career studying anomalies, but this was different. The pod approaching their station wasn't just broadcasting a distress signal, it was emanating waves of psychic energy unlike anything in their database. "Director Walsh wants us to ignore it," her colleague Dr. Patel said, joining her at the window. "Says we can't risk bringing unknown alien tech aboard." Rowan smiled, the expression lighting up her weathered face. "Good thing I've never been great at following orders." She tapped her comm unit. "Engineering, prepare the retrieval drones. We're about to make first contact." As the drones brought the pod aboard, Rowan felt a strange sensation, like someone was gently brushing against her thoughts. She'd later learn this was just the beginning, the first thread of a connection that would change not only her life but the future of two civilizations. The pod's exterior bore the marks of careful damage, but Rowan's experienced eye caught the deception immediately. Someone had wanted this to look like an accident while ensuring the occupant survived. When the seals finally released with a soft hiss, revealing the young Nexarian woman inside, Rowan understood why. Solara's ivory skin shimmered with bioluminescent patterns, her closed eyes moving rapidly beneath delicate lids. More striking than her alien beauty was the energy surrounding her, visible even to the naked eye as a subtle distortion in the air. "My God," Dr. Patel whispered. "What is she?" "The better question," Rowan said, already preparing a medical scanner, "is why would someone go to such lengths to abandon her? She reached out to check Solara's vital signs, and the moment her hand made contact, a jolt of awareness passed between them. Solara's eyes snapped open, revealing irises that swirled with colors like distant nebulae. Her voice echoed not in the air but directly in Rowan's mind, "Help me." The lights in the medical bay flickered, and for a moment, every screen displayed the same pattern, neural pathways lighting up like stars being born. Rowan squeezed the young alien's hand, knowing that this moment would mark the beginning of something extraordinary. "You're safe now," she said softly. "And we're going to figure this out together." 3 weeks passed on the research station as Solara adjusted to her new reality. The medical bay had become both sanctuary and prison, its walls lined with monitoring equipment that hummed constantly, tracking the strange energies that emanated from her body. Dr. Rowan Harper sat cross-legged on the floor beside Solara's bed, her tablet forgotten in her lap as she watched the young Nexarian attempt to lift a small metal sphere using only her mind. Sweat beaded on Solara's bioluminescent skin, her patterns pulsing with effort. "Remember what we discussed," Rowan said softly. "Don't force it. Your abilities aren't separate from you, they're an extension of who you are." The sphere trembled, then slowly rose an inch off the table. Solara's eyes, swirling with cosmic colors, widened in surprise. For a moment, joy flooded through her, and everyone in the medical bay felt it, a wave of pure emotion that made the lights brighten and the monitors chime in harmony. Then the sphere clattered back to the table as alarms blared through the station. Director Walsh's voice crackled over the intercom, "Dr. Harper to the command center." Immediately. Rowan found the station's director pacing before a wall of holographic displays. Jameson Walsh was a practical man who'd spent 30 years managing research stations across the galaxy. He didn't appreciate mysteries he couldn't explain. "Look at these readings," he demanded, gesturing to the screens. "Power fluctuations, unexplained energy signatures, and now this." He pointed to a graph that showed steadily increasing waves of some unknown force emanating from their station. "We're lighting up every sensor in this sector. It's only a matter of time before someone comes to investigate." "She's learning to control it," Rowan argued. "Each day brings new progress. The insights we're gaining into psychic phenomena alone could revolutionize our understanding of consciousness. Or bring an alien fleet down on our heads." Walsh ran a hand through his graying hair. "The Nexarians aren't known for their forgiveness, Doctor. If they learn we're harboring one of their own." "They abandoned her," Rowan's voice turned hard. "Left her to die, or be found, they can't complain about the consequences of their own actions." A soft voice interrupted them, "They fear what they cannot control." Both humans turned to find Solara standing in the doorway, supported by Dr. Patel. Her presence seemed to fill the room, not just physically but on some deeper level that made the air itself feel charged with potential. "I didn't authorize her to leave medical," Walsh started, but Solara raised a hand, and suddenly they could all see what she saw, a memory projected directly into their minds. They stood in a vast chamber of crystalline architecture, where a young Solara played with floating lights, making them dance and swirl. Then her father entered, his face twisted with horror as he watched her abilities manifest. The memory shifted to heated arguments between Thaxis and others of his kind, their voices overlapping, dangerous, unstable, threat to the natural order. When the vision faded, Walsh steadied himself against a console. How did you do that?" "I am learning," Solara said aloud, her voice musical but uncertain with the unfamiliar words. "Dr. Harper teaches me control, but also understanding. Humans." She smiled, her patterns brightening, "Humans do not fear difference. You embrace it." Rowan moved to support Solara as Dr. Patel checked her vital signs. "This is exactly what I've been trying to tell you, Director. She's not just displaying abilities, she's developing new ones, integrating them with a level of control that should be impossible for someone just discovering their powers." Walsh stared at the readings, which had stabilized into regular patterns. And you believe you can help her master these abilities safely? Not just safely, Rowan said, excitement creeping into her voice. What we learn here could bridge the gap between our species. Imagine the possibilities if we could understand and develop these latent capabilities. Before Walsh could respond, the station's proximity alerts activated. A small ship had emerged from hyperspace at the edge of their sensor range. It wasn't Nexarian in design, it appeared to be a private research vessel, but its arrival sent a ripple of tension through the command center. Solara's patterns dimmed as she sensed the newcomer's intentions. They felt the energy. They've come to investigate, to study. Her mental voice carried a note of warning. But they are not alone in their interest. Rowan exchanged glances with Walsh. They both understood the implications. If a private research vessel had detected their activities, others would follow. They needed to prepare. 2 months, Walsh said finally. You have 2 months to help her gain control. After that, we'll need to make some hard decisions about her future here. As they left the command center, Solara touched Rowan's arm. The human scientist felt a flutter of images and emotions, gratitude, determination, and something else. A growing awareness of powers still untapped, waiting just beneath the surface. We'll figure this out, Rowan promised. Together. Solara nodded, her patterns forming complex geometries that Rowan had learned to recognize as expressions of hope. But behind that hope lay a shadow of concern. In her growing connection to the universe around her, Solara had sensed something approaching, a darkness that felt terrifyingly familiar. Her father might have abandoned her, but she knew with increasing certainty that their story was far from over. Dr. Rowan Harper stood transfixed as Solara demonstrated her latest breakthrough. The young Nexarian hovered 3 feet above the ground, surrounded by a sphere of pure energy that bent light around its surface. Within the sphere, smaller orbs of different colors orbited her like planets around a star, each containing various objects from the lab, tools, medical equipment, even a cup of coffee that hadn't spilled a drop. Remarkable, whispered Dr. Patel, monitoring the energy readings. She's not just moving objects anymore. She's creating localized gravity fields, manipulating electromagnetic forces at a quantum level. The private research vessel that had arrived last week hung visible through the observation window, a reminder of the growing attention their work had attracted. Its crew had made repeated requests to study Solara, all politely declined by Director Walsh. Solara's eyes opened, swirling with new colors that seemed to reflect distant galaxies. There is more, her mental voice echoed through their minds. Watch. The sphere of energy expanded, and suddenly they weren't just in the lab anymore. The walls appeared to dissolve, revealing the vast expanse of space around the station. Stars wheeled overhead, gas giants danced in their orbits, and cosmic radiation painted ribbons of light across the void. This isn't just a projection, Rowan realized, her scientific mind racing to understand. You're somehow letting us perceive reality as you do now. The universe sings, Solara explained, her mental voice filled with wonder. Each particle, each wave of energy, contains patterns. Once you learn to listen, you can. The vision shattered as the station's alert system blared to life. Director Walsh's voice crackled through the intercom, Dr. Harper, bring Solara to the command center. Now. They found Walsh standing before a tactical display, his face grim. 3 massive ships had just emerged from hyperspace at the edge of their system. Their crystalline architecture was unmistakable, Nexarian warships. They're not responding to hails, Walsh reported. But they're broadcasting an automated message. He activated the transmission. Commander Thaxis's face filled the screen, his silver scales gleaming under military lights. This is Commander Thaxis of the Nexarian Empire. You are harboring a dangerous fugitive. Surrender the aberrant known as Solara immediately, or face the consequences of defying imperial law. Solara's patterns dimmed, but her mental voice remained steady. He lies. Imperial law has no jurisdiction here. This is personal. They'll be in weapons range in 6 hours, Walsh said. We've got to evacuate the non-essential personnel. Evacuate? Rowan stepped forward. We can't just give up. Solara's made incredible progress. What she's learning could change everything we know about consciousness, about the fundamental forces of the universe itself. And what happens when they start firing on us? Walsh demanded. This is a research station, not a fortress. There is another option. Solara's mental voice carried a new tone, determination mixed with something ancient and powerful. But you must trust me. She raised her hands, and the command center's lights flickered. Holographic displays sprang to life, showing not just local space but the quantum fabric of reality itself. Points of light connected in vast webs of energy, revealing patterns that human science had only theorized about. The station's power grid, Solara spoke aloud, her voice stronger now. It forms a lattice. With the right modifications, I could extend my abilities through it. Create a shield. That's impossible, Dr. Patel said, but her fingers were already flying over calculations. The power requirements alone would be, she stopped, staring at the numbers. Actually, with these quantum effects she's describing, it might work. Rowan watched as Solara's patterns shifted into complex geometries she'd never seen before. The young Nexarian's presence seemed to fill the room, not just physically but on some fundamental level that made reality itself feel more substantial. My father fears what I am because he does not understand, Solara said. The Nexarians once had powers like mine, but they chose to suppress them, fearing their own potential. Humans. She smiled at Rowan. Humans embrace the unknown. You seek to understand rather than control. That is why I trust you to help me now. Walsh looked between the tactical display showing the approaching warships and the impossible calculations spreading across their screens. How long would these modifications take? 4 hours, Dr. Patel said. Maybe 3 if we redirect all non-essential power. That's cutting it close, Walsh muttered. Time enough, Solara projected, and they all felt her certainty. But I must tell you something first. Something I have only recently understood about myself. The air shimmered as Solara accessed memories that weren't quite her own, genetic memories, passed down through countless generations. They saw vast beings of pure energy taking physical form, choosing to limit themselves to better understand the younger races. The Nexarians had not just suppressed their powers, they had deliberately forgotten their own origins. You're saying? Rowan's voice caught as the implications hit her. You're not just another evolution of Nexarian abilities. You're a throwback to what they originally were. Yes, Solara confirmed. And now I must decide, remain hidden as they did, or embrace what I truly am, even if it changes everything. Through the viewport, the crystalline forms of the Nexarian warships grew larger, their weapons already charging. The next few hours would determine not just Solara's fate, but potentially the future of human-Nexarian relations and the awakening of powers long forgotten. Rowan squared her shoulders. Well then, let's get to work. We've got a station to fortify and a few thousand years of suppressed evolution to unlock. Solara's patterns brightened with fierce joy. The storm was coming, but this time, she would not face it alone. The research station hummed with transformed energy as Solara stood at its heart, her consciousness extended through every circuit and conduit. Dr. Rowan Harper and her team had worked frantically to modify the power grid, creating a network that amplified and channeled Solara's abilities throughout the entire structure. Nexarian ships entering weapons range in 5 minutes, Director Walsh announced from the command center, his voice tense but controlled. Rowan watched the readouts as Solara's energy signature grew stronger, spreading through the station like roots through soil. The young Nexarian's ivory skin now glowed with patterns that seemed to reflect the very fabric of spacetime, her eyes blazing with starfire. Multiple targeting locks detected, Dr. Patel reported. They're charging weapon systems. They expect me to be weak, Solara's mental voice resonated through the station. They expect me to hide. The first salvo of energy weapons lanced out from the Nexarian warships, brilliant beams of destructive force, only to scatter harmlessly against an invisible barrier. The shield Solara had created wasn't just deflecting the attacks, it was absorbing their energy, incorporating it into its own matrix. Commander Thaxis's voice boomed through their communications, "This is your final warning. Surrender the aberrant, or we will be forced to take more dramatic measures." Solara's response wasn't in words. Instead, she opened a channel that broadcast directly into the minds of every Nexarian aboard those ships. They saw through her eyes, felt through her consciousness, the truth of their own history, the power they had feared and forgotten. On the lead warship's bridge, Thaxis staggered under the weight of ancestral memories. "Impossible," he whispered. "The records were destroyed. The bloodlines purged." "You cannot purge what lives in every cell of our being," Solara projected. "You cannot erase what we truly are." The warships launched a second attack, more powerful than the first. This time, crystalline torpedoes phased through normal space, designed to bypass conventional defenses. But Solara's shield operated on multiple levels of reality simultaneously. The torpedoes simply ceased to exist, their energy converted and absorbed. "My God," Rowan breathed, watching the readings. "She's not just defending, she's transcending the normal laws of physics. The power levels are off the scale." Through their shared connection, they felt Solara's gentle correction, not transcending the laws. Understanding them as they truly are. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the station. New ships were emerging from hyperspace, but these weren't Nexarian. The sleek vessels bore the markings of the private research corporation that had been observing them. Multiple boarding attempts detected, Walsh reported. "They're trying to breach the lower levels. Looks like someone decided to take advantage of the chaos." Rowan's hands clenched. "They're after her research data. All our observations of her abilities." "They will not succeed," Solara assured them. But maintaining the shield against the Nexarian assault while defending against infiltrators was straining even her enhanced capabilities. That's when Commander Thaxis made his move. A hidden protocol activated in the warship systems, and they began generating a resonance field, a weapon designed specifically to disrupt the kind of energy Solara was channeling. Pain lanced through the station as Solara's network faltered. The shield flickered, and for a moment, it seemed their defenses would collapse. But then something remarkable happened. Deep in Solara's genetic memory, something awakened, a knowledge older than the Nexarian Empire itself. Her consciousness expanded beyond the station, beyond the physical realm, touching the quantum threads that bound reality together. "Father," her mental voice reached out to Thaxis. "You tried to break me because you feared what you did not understand. But in doing so, you helped me become what I was always meant to be." The resonance field suddenly reversed, the energy flowing back into Solara's network. The warship systems began to shut down, their crystalline structures resonating with frequencies that hadn't been heard in millennia. Through the command center's viewport, they watched in awe as Solara's influence spread. The corporate vessels attempting to breach the station found their systems locked, their boarding parties frozen in place. The Nexarian warships hung motionless in space, their crews experiencing a simultaneous awakening as ancient memories surfaced. The genetic memories, Rowan realized. She's not just accessing them, she's reactivating them in others of her kind. "We forgot ourselves," Solara explained, her mental voice reaching everyone, human and Nexarian alike. "We chose limitation out of fear. But there is another way." On the lead warship's bridge, Commander Thaxis fell to his knees as the truth of his heritage overwhelmed him. The power he had feared in his daughter was his legacy too, a birthright not of destruction, but of understanding and creation. The station's sensors registered a phenomenon never before recorded, a quantum field of conscious energy, extending outward from Solara, bridging the gap between organic life and the fundamental forces of the universe itself. In the days following the confrontation, the research station became a nexus of unprecedented cooperation between humans and Nexarians. The corporate vessels had been escorted away by Earth Alliance peacekeepers, their attempted infiltration documented and their licenses suspended. But the real story was unfolding in the transformed minds and hearts of those who remained. Commander Thaxis stood before the observation window, his silver scales reflecting the starlight differently now. The rigid military bearing he'd maintained for decades had softened, replaced by something more contemplative. Beside him, Solara's patterns rippled with subtle emotions as they shared their first real conversation as father and daughter. All those years, Thaxis said quietly, I thought I was protecting our people by suppressing what we were. Instead, I was perpetuating a prison built by our own fear. Understanding comes in its own time, Solara responded, her mental voice carrying acceptance rather than accusation. We had to forget to remember. Sometimes the longest path leads us home. In the station's main laboratory, Dr. Rowan Harper and Dr. Patel worked alongside Nexarian scientists, including Dr. Vex, who had once helped arrange Solara's abandonment. Together, they studied the changes occurring in both species as dormant abilities began to resurface. It's not just psychic power, Rowan explained to Director Walsh as they reviewed the latest data. The awakening is affecting both humans and Nexarians, but differently. In Nexarians, it's reactivating abilities they'd suppressed. In humans, it's accelerating our own potential, helping us access parts of our consciousness we never knew existed. Walsh nodded, watching a group of human researchers learning to perceive quantum fields under the guidance of newly awakened Nexarian teachers. The Council wants to know if it's dangerous. If we should try to contain it. Contain it? Rowan laughed softly. You might as well try to contain evolution itself. This isn't a disease or a weapon, it's growth. Understanding. The very thing we've been searching for since we first looked up at the stars. In the station's central chamber, Solara had created what the humans called a resonance garden, a space where energy patterns became visible, where thoughts could take shape, and where both species could learn to explore their expanding consciousness. She moved through the garden now, her form seeming to shift between physical and energy states as naturally as breathing. The universe has always been conscious, she explained to a mixed group of human and Nexarian students. We simply forgot how to listen. How to participate in the conversation. A young human researcher raised her hand. But why now? Why did this awakening happen at this particular moment? Solara's patterns formed complex geometries of contemplation. Perhaps because both our species were ready. Humans with their ceaseless curiosity, their willingness to embrace the unknown. Nexarians with their buried truths, their need to remember. Together, we create something new. Commander Thaxis, who had been observing the lesson, stepped forward. The High Council has reviewed our findings. They've proposed establishing this station as a permanent joint research and training facility. A place where both our peoples can explore these abilities safely, under proper guidance. Proper guidance? Dr. Patel raised an eyebrow. You mean under Solara's guidance? Under our shared guidance, Thaxis corrected, inclining his head toward the humans. We've learned the hard way what happens when one perspective dominates. The future requires balance. As if in response to his words, the resonance garden shifted, its patterns forming a double helix that spiraled up toward the ceiling, DNA merged with stardust, biology intertwined with cosmic forces. Those sensitive to the new energies could feel the change rippling outward from the station, touching other worlds, other minds. Rowan found Solara later in the medical bay where they had first met, now transformed into a meditation space. "Are you ready for this?" she asked. Being a teacher, a guide for two species taking their first steps into a larger universe? Solara turned to her friend, her patterns forming the geometry that Rowan had learned meant joy. "I am ready to learn alongside them. The path ahead is not about masters and students, but about remembering together. About becoming what we always were." Through the viewport, a new ship appeared, the first of many that would come seeking understanding. Its design was neither human nor Nexarian, but a harmonious blend of both, created specifically for this new era of exploration and awakening. "Look," Solara projected, sharing her perception with everyone on the station. Through her eyes, they saw not just the physical ship, but the web of consciousness that connected all living things, a network as vast as space itself, humming with potential and purpose. "What do you see?" Thaxis asked, his voice hushed with wonder. "I see us," Solara answered, her mental voice filled with hope. "All of us, reaching beyond the stars, not to conquer or control, but to understand. To become." As the station orbited the pale blue gas giant where her journey had begun, Solara's consciousness touched the minds of those around her, human and Nexarian, scientist and soldier, parent and child. In that touch was a promise. This was not an ending, but a beginning. The stars had always been conscious, and now, at last, they were ready to hear their song.